Good morning, Rutherford County. It's good to be with you again today, this morning. We are so glad that you're listening in. Today we have Dorothea Davies back from Monday. She came and began to share a little bit about her testimony, her story, about the goodness of God and what God has done in her life. For those of you that did not listen on Monday, Dorothea is my mom. And she's 95 years old. You would know it if you met her. Those of you that are viewing in, you might have a hard time believing it, but she turns 95 next week. And Dorothea is a precious lady that has had the love of God in her heart as long as I've known her, and even years before that. She grew up having a real heart to want to know God, and as she got older, came into places of serving Jesus and loving God and loving to serve God's people. And she started her story on Monday and really didn't even get halfway through. Of course, 95 years old. It takes a while to get through the many chapters of somebody's life when they're 95. But she asked to come back and pick up where she left off on Monday. And how could you deny that to her? She wanted to share more about the goodness of God and what God has brought her through in her life. She's had some challenges that she's going to share with you today. And I think you're going to be blessed to see how this lady has allowed God to move in her life through the years. So, Mom, go ahead, get started.
Thank you, Connie, and thank you. And thank you for listening. I appreciate you all that tune in on us and that we can talk to you. Well, my life started with what I would call some abuse. It happened to me in child life. And any of you who have had difficulty time in child life, you could call it abuse. It could be severe or whatever, but it bothered you. It bothered you, and it just hung on you. And here you find as you go older and older and older, it's still there. And that's what happened with me. It was not that strong. My parents provided very well for me. But at the same time, my mother continually argued and fought, and I could never please her, never do anything right. And my father put up with it, and I thought that was terrible. I don't understand why he put up with it, but he did. And then also I found out later in child life that in his business in the market where he was selling poultry, he was stealing from the customers. He would put a chicken up on the scale, up on the to weigh it, and then he would read the figure as to what it would cost, and he would always add maybe a quarter or so. Now you have to remember this is way back in the 1930s that this happened, and it was a lot of money, and that bothered me a lot. And I used to plead with my father to stop that, and he never would. So that put a wedge between us. I never really felt the love and the respect for him like I would have, if he had been loving. It's so important to give love to children when they're young like that, and just to care for, just let them know that you correct them in a loving way. Be loving to them, and because these things can come in, they have thoughts, and they stick with them. Years and years go by. Years. I was 80, and I was still being stuck with all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But you see, other people have deeper things bothering them. Maybe you. I don't know. But you need to know that it started because of the thoughts you took and you held on to, and you held on to. So I realized when I was 8 years old that when my mother told me I'd never amount to anything at all. I'm not going to go into all that, but the thing is, that's when it locked into my heart that I'd never make it. Now, I don't know what I wasn't going to make, but I wasn't going to make it. And so that patterned my whole life. And so as I'm going all through life, I'm leaning to Jesus. I didn't know him, but I'm leaning to God. And I keep leaning to God and realizing there is a God. And go off to church by myself. Nobody in the family goes, but I walked off, and it happened to be an Episcopal church. So I began my church life and start moving in the ways of God. And then I found this young fellow, Chick Davies, and we became married. Now, I brought into my marriage junk thoughts that caused me to withdraw all the time, and yet he brought into the marriage. He was from a very, very poor home, and his mother bright with Jesus, openly singing, attending church, and just being so sweet, and a father who was bitter and used a whip on the children, and if he didn't like the dinner, he would turn the plate upside down and throw it on the floor and just cuss something terrible. I mean, he was really a strong, bitter man. So now we've come together into a marriage, and we love one another, but yet we his background and my background, we started clashing, and we couldn't really get to help one another. He couldn't help me, and I couldn't help him, and we stayed together all the time. We were married, almost 60 years, and but still there was something there was nothing real sweet about our marriage
until the very end, and it got real sweet in the end.
Yeah, that's right, to the end.
And then tell us about what happened though with Curtis, because this is a key part of your life, of another thing that you had to deal with after you and Kurt had your first child.
Yes. Well, he was born in 48, and in 49 he had a hernia, and we had to take him to the hospital and for surgery. Well, in those days, they kept you in the hospital for a full week for a hernia. And not only that, there was no thought or preparation as to parents staying with the child or to help the child through anything. You just took the child to the hospital, and then you turned the child over to somebody, and then you had to leave. I mean, you stand outside the door, they close the door. Now you hear him crying. He's only 16 months old, and here he is screaming and screaming. Now that's another thing about the hospital at that time. They always wore white. Doctors always had white smocks on down below their knees, white pants, white shoes. But the nurses had another thing. There weren't any male nurses, all female nurses. And they had the white uniform, starched white uniform, and hose and shoes, and a white cap. So here's this white world the child is suddenly in for a week. And we couldn't even let him see us when we went to visit him. So now this is his experience now. It doesn't make any difference how young or how old you are. What's going to happen to you, and what's going to happen to your children, their children, and how you take care of them. Well, anyway, we couldn't do anything but have to just leave him there. But when we finally came to get him, he would have nothing to do with us, and that was the pattern for his life the whole time he lived with us.
Now, he wasn't like that before he went in.
No.
He was a loving, very sweet child.
That's right.
And after this experience, something happened to him.
Yeah. He thought he was abandoned.
Yeah, and that would affect the child.
That's right. And so he would have nothing to do with us. And we tried to get into his heart again, but we couldn't do it. We buy him, tricycle, put him in a bunk bed right away. We tried all kinds of things, but we couldn't do it. We didn't know what to do. It was a heartache. And he gets to be a teenager, and now he's in his last year in high school, and he had a nervous breakdown. And that really turned me for a loop. And I cried out to God. I went into the bedroom and I just cried and cried out to God, you know. And I was crying out to him. He said to me, trust and obey. And in fact, he said it over and over again for a whole Friday and Saturday. He kept telling me, trust and obey. Trust and obey. I mean, he just in a rhythm all the time. And I don't know why he thought he had to tell me so many times, but he did. And anyway, I thought, well, yeah, I'll just have to trust and obey, and I'll be all right. But then things started happening. I mean, he ran off to New York. Now, I didn't know he'd gone to New York. Nobody did. You know, we thought he was still in Baltimore, and because it was winter, it was cold, and he was gone for 4 months and 10 days, and so we just kept searching. The family and I have a daughter. Since then, after that, I had 2 children and 2 other children, a girl and a boy, and it bothered us so much the way Curtis was going, what was happening to him, that we just went through the city every chance we could get. We get others to go with us, and the church would pray, and we didn't know what to do.
And the posters.
Yes, we made posters and everything. Everybody had a picture. Every officer had a picture of him. We knew he was in Baltimore City. But the whole time he's in New York, and he lived up there. And he told us about his experiences up there, where he 2 experiences he had where he almost died in Times Square. So anyway, that was bad, and he came back, and he got back because he was found in a telephone booth all curled up, and the police picked him up and called us, and we got him back. But that was one experience, but there were many after that. And this word, trust and obey, I'd say, but God says trust and obey. And sometimes it'd be so weak. I mean, I couldn't, it'd be so bad. I couldn't trust. But other times, I pick up strength, you see, and go on and trust, trying to trust. And then we're in the Baptist church now. We've moved down to the suburbs of Baltimore, South Baltimore. I'm in the Baptist church now, and I'm reading, and I'm in the Bible. By the way, I was so thankful for the Baptist because I found Jesus there the first time. No church before, none since a child when I went to church, had a sermon about Jesus. But there the sermon was. And I was so pleased. And we sang all the hymns, just like my mother-in-law did, because she used to live with us for a while. And sure enough, it was so rich. I thought I had it, I found it. Because I was always looking for something, of that. There had to be more. I mean, up in Baltimore, I just knew it had to be more. And one of the churches, I can remember, I put my arms around a little boy, and I could not comfort him. His father had a heart attack, and he was all upset and disturbed, and I had nothing I could say to him. I mean, I just couldn't say anything. I mean, here I am, big wheel, in the church, and teaching Sunday school and this and that, and all this business, and here I had nothing I could say. I went to that pastor afterward in that week, and I said, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. There's nothing. And he says, Dorothea, we have it all. Now you just settle yourself down. We just have it all. And I left there, and I thought, I just can't believe that. I've got to have help. And so that's when I drove to a Christian bookstore and got 3 books on prayer. And I'm searching. I know it has to do with prayer. I've got to get to the bottom of this. I've got to find it. So that's what I kept moving on. So, but I want to get back. I read the Bible, and I found that demons have, that people can have demons. And that if they had them at Jesus' time, they got them today too. And so that's when I thought I've got to. I go. I go to another Christian bookstore now. You know my new neighborhood. I go to the Christian bookstore again to find out. And the girl was so sweet, and she says, "Oh yes, we do." And so she gives me material to read about it. And she's in a charismatic movement. I don't know what this is all about. So she's telling me about this charismatic movement that's taking place up in Baltimore. And so I'm traveling with her way up to where I used to live. And there's only a handful of people there, but I'm in on the ground level of the Christian movement of all opening up. I thought, God, this is it. They do believe in prayer. They do believe that you can be healed. You do have demons. You can get deliverance. That's right. And I was so pleased. So that's where I was. But Curtis, I was anxious. Now, by the way, he's back in the hospital. And so I go to the hospital to tell him the good news. And he's agreeable. If I could, so I get him out of the hospital and I take him for deliverance, and nothing happens. You know, I don't know. I had to wait and sit in the car while he was inside for an hour, and I don't know what took place in there, but that's what nothing seemed to show. But I keep going and going, and I found a man who was a Baptist minister, and he had discovered that people can have demons today. And so at that time, they put him out of the Baptist church. So here he's living in Mayo, Maryland, which is a little southern town. And he's down there, and he's he and his wife opened up their little bungalow and would see us on Monday nights, and crowds would come in. And it was a rich time. And afterwards, he'd have deliverance. Well, Curtis went. And the next week, and the next week, and the next week. And he always got deliverance. And then he got clean to the point where he knew that Jesus loved him. And he was so happy. He bounced around. He was so happy. Now, mind you, he never cared for us, the whole time he lived with us. Mm-hmm. But now, he was learning that he had a mom that loved him. And he used to hug me and tell me how beautiful I was. And, oh, let me look at you again, Mom. Oh, you are so sweet. And he'd squeeze me, and it was so good. And he would go up the steps, skipping the steps many times. And he was so full. And if he was late coming home, it was because he was with someone. He's helping somebody. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, if there's a car parked on the side of the road, he's going to pull over. And he was so good. This went on for months. We're so happy. Our family is so happy. But you see, if you don't know how to keep them out, they come back. And they come back many times more.
Read the scripture.
And I have a scripture that this is what happened to him. In Luke 11:26. When the unclean spirit comes out of a person, it roams in search of a place to rest, and not finding any, it says, I will go back to my house. The person to which I came. And when it comes, it finds the place swept, which he had it all swept up, and put in order. And then it goes and it brings 7 others, spirits, more evil than itself. And they go in to the person and live there. And the last day of that person becomes worse than the first.
Mom, give that scripture reference in case anybody wants to look that up. That's in
Luke chapter 11. Verse 26.
Now this is in the gospel. This is what the Bible says can happen to someone.
Yes.
And you experienced that firsthand with your son.
Yes, I did.
Absolutely.
Yes,
so
I
then
did.
Bring us up a little bit further than of what happened through the years, just real quick, because we are running out of time again.
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay, tell us a little bit about what happened through the years with that experience, because
well,
that was significant in your life.
Well, that was very bad. he had one horrible experience after another, where they come to the door and tell me he was dead, and we see him right away in the car, full of drugs, street drugs. He had tattoos put all over his body. Now wait a minute. This wasn't when like today's where people are putting tattoos on. I mean, you hardly ever saw him then, because that was back. He was many years ago.
And tell him some of the drugs, the street drugs that he actually got on, which would obviously make his condition much worse.
That's right.
Was it LSD?
LSD and speed.
Speed. So those were street drugs.
He wouldn't eat because of speed, and he got skinny as a rail. And he would have LSD flashbacks. And then wherever he was when he had the flashbacks would be torment. One time we got a phone call. He was in Orlando, Florida, at Disney World, and he had a flashback. Of course, you see Mickey Mouse, 9 feet tall, and you're having LSD flashback. It did him in. It was terrible.
So these were horrible times, and we all suffered, and but it would be an end to it. God would come through, and it would be an end, and then we'd have a little time of peace, and we'd get ourselves together again, and another time. But that was bad. But I just want to tell you about that.
And then bring us up to what happened, because where you were believing God, even in the midst of the worst, you were still holding on that somehow, some way, God would get to his heart. Tell us about what happened there just a few years ago when he was making some choices.
Okay. Then finally I got to the place where I said, God, you do it. I mean, I'm giving him to you. You have to get to a place. You say, well, God, I know you're going to heal him, but you got to bring him down here, because this church is full of healing for people. I mean, we're all sick. Everybody that's come here has been sick. And we're all getting healing. This is such a beautiful church, God. You got to bring him here. This is where we are, and bring him here. No. It's got to be 100%. God, do it. Just do it. You do it there, you do it here, but just do it. And mean it with all your heart. And I did.
She finally surrendered. She finally had peace in her heart that she could trust God with his life, not just her life, but his life. And that's a hard thing for a mom that loves their child, to really just put the child in God's hands and say, he's yours. I trust you with his life. Mm-hmm. Tell what happened.
Well, then he starts calling me up. He's up in Baltimore, and he starts calling me up, and he's asking me questions, and I'm answering them. And he calls me again, and he says, well, where are you going to find that in the Bible? And I tell him, and he's all right. So he'd look that up. And then he'd tell me that how he enjoyed walking, going to get his food and walking back. He says, I have such a good time. I talk to Jesus going back. And we have such fellowship. And then he talks about the peace he has. And he talks about how he goes to this one and that one. And he talks about he tries to go to church, but they can't find a church to go to. And he always comes, he gives it up, because he doesn't find the church that gives him what he needs in the Baltimore area. And so he gives that up again. And then he smokestack. He just smoke. And he got cancer. And then he decided that he was going to stick with Jesus. And he had a rough physical time, but he stuck in there with Jesus. And he became a Christian at the end, and I was so pleased.
He knew he was so desperate. He got to the place where he realized that he was desperate, and he had made some wrong choices in his life. And he really at the very end, to start making things right, because he realized something was wrong. That's right. Something was desperately wrong. He didn't know he had cancer, but he knew, and you felt his heart coming to God. And I'll just finish up with a little part of that at the very end. Charles and I would go up to Maryland every weekend for a couple of months. Actually, Charles went many times. I went with him a couple of times. But I can remember the one time we went in there, and the doctors, at that time, we still didn't know that he had cancer. We just knew he was very sick. And we went into the room. They said that he was in a coma. His eyes were shut, no response at all. We went in and we began to sing, "Worthy, worthy are you, Lord, worthy to be thanked and praised and worshiped and adored." We began to sing that song as loud as we could sing it. It didn't matter who heard us. We were just singing, and the presence of God came in that room. He opened his eyes, and tears came down his face. And we could tell that he was responding to the love of God that day. And it wasn't but about a couple of weeks later that he finally passed and went on. The miracle of all of that was that in the midst of all of that, Mom had a hold of Jesus, and she had peace through all of that. And I remember the day that he passed. I'll never forget, Mom, when you looked at me and you said, because you knew he had made things right with God. And you looked at me and you said, "Connie, it is such a beautiful day." Such a beautiful day. And you know, what God has brought Mom through, and especially with that, as long as I've known Mom, this was the thing that was her biggest heartache, was her son Curtis.
That's right.
Because of all that he suffered. And it is difficult, I'm sure. I've never seen a child suffer like what he suffered. But it's hard. And I know there might be people out there that are listening in to her story today, that you have children or close family members that you love very much that have gone through some hard times and things that there's nothing you can do really in your own ability to help them. They just need Jesus. They need God. But trust and obey is what she lived on.
That's right.
As long as I knew her. I've known her 38, 40 years. I don't know. I met Curtis when I met her for the first time up in Baltimore when I went to visit the family. And that has been her song as long as I've known her, because of what she experienced with Curtis. But we hope, Mom, I know you might have a few more things to say, but we're running out of time. Is there one more last thing that you might want to share with them before we close up today?
I just want to say that I had to get to be 90 years old when I felt such peace and joy that had come into me. And all this old stuff that hung on me got washed away. And I had missed out on being a friend to my children and my grandchildren. I really did. And I found out that here they were, and I was sort of a stranger to them. But that all got washed away, and I got great-grandchildren. And I said, Lord, I want to treat them the way you want me to treat them, not the way I lived. And sure enough, they just multiply for me. And I like to do things for people, and I'm interested in people. I always have been. But so I don't think about how old I am.
That's right.
I just think about it's time to
to
go.
And actually, she had a scripture. She told us that she wanted to share that fits right into what she's trying to tell you right now. It's in
it's Ephesians.
Isaiah 46.
6. I thought you opened up to it.
Right here.
Oh, here.
Can you read it here, Mom?
All right.
Here,
Read it out of
listen.
here.
Right here it is.
Isaiah 46.
I got it.
Has I got it? Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. All
There
right.
you go. You do.
Yeah, I had another place in the Bible, and they were trying to switch my places. But the other place is Colossians 3:17, and down through the years, since I got to the Word of Faith, that verse has meant so much to me, and has kept me. Just read it when you get home. But now this one is Isaiah 46, starting with the second part of verse 3. You who have been carried by me from your birth and have been carried in my arms from the womb, even in your old age, I am he. And even in your advanced old age, I will carry you. I will make you. I have made you, and I will carry you. Be assured I will carry you, and I will save you. And that has been peace and joy.
That's right. Well, we want to thank
you.
Mom. Thank you for sharing your heart with us. And we hope that you enjoyed this testimony. We hope it brings you a lot of hope. You can hear the first part of her testimony at www.wordoffaithfellowship.org and any of our other testimonies that our people have shared with you over the last almost 12 months. So please, thank you for listening in again today. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Have a good day.